Hello everyone, welcome you all to the seventh lecture of the course Experimental Methods in Thermal Engineering. In the previous lecture, we have discussed about the uncertainty analysis, and then I have briefly introduced some of the statistical quantities which are required for analyzing our data. This is nothing but the second part of the lecture on analysis of experimental data. So in this, we will try to see some more techniques to analyze our data, and particularly in this lecture, we will be discussing one very important aspect, that when we take some experimental data, what is the ideal distribution that our data should follow, and in our data, how to decide that which one is the bad reading which we should eliminate. Okay, so that is something which we will do in this lecture. So let me start with the first concept of probability distribution. So let us consider one example, that we are having a man which is standing at certain distance from the target, and uh, the target is located at, say, some distance from this person, and then what this person is doing, he is actually throwing a horseshoe, and his target point is that this horseshoe should hit this location. Okay. So what will be happening when person will be going for the number of tries? Obviously, every time he will not be able to exactly hit the target. But if a person is expert, so what he will be able to do, in whatever the number of trials he is doing, in these number of trials, maximum number of times he will be actually reaching the target, or he will be close to the target. Okay, so that is something if a person is having a good experience of throwing. Okay, so if we try to see or try to find out the probability, that what will be the probability at which we are considering that person will be hitting the target. Okay, so for that, let us consider that we are having this xm as the actual distance at which our target is located. Okay, and if we, as I have told you, that if a person is expert and if he is going for the large number of samples, so one more condition is there. If we are going for large number of samples, there will be chances that majority of the times he will be close enough to the target. Okay, so it means the probability of exactly hitting the target will be highest. So that is something which is depicted over here. Okay, and the probability when your horseshoe is not hitting the target, that will be slightly less. And as we will be moving away from the target point, obviously the value of that probability will be decreasing. Okay, so that type of plot where we are having the variation of distance along the abscissa, and correspondingly the probability of hitting the target along ordinate, that type of curve is something which is known as a probability distribution. Okay, so the probability distribution I have shown over here, this is nothing but one ideal probability distribution. Why ideal? Because we are considering that a person is expert in throwing. So what will be happening, majority of the time, whatever the, if we are taking large number of samples, maximum number of times he will be able to reach the target, or he will be close enough to the target, and there will be very less chances that he is at significant difference from significant distance from the target. Okay, so randomly, if we consider at any uh, x location, if we try to find out, so whatever our ordinate will be reflecting, that is nothing but the probability value corresponding to that x variable. Okay, and if we want to see that, okay, what is the zone of probability in between particular some range of x, so for that what you can do, the step like it is shown over here, x to x plus delta x. So you can see this is the difference, whatever is shaded region over here highlighted in a small spectrum of the distance, that what will be the probability of hitting this spectrum. Okay, so this is something which is about the general description of the probability distribution, but we are having certain distributions which specify the nature of events which are occurring in some data. Okay, so one of such standard distribution is something which is known as binomial distribution. Okay, so in case of binomial distribution, what is done? Let us consider that we are having the two possibilities. Okay, so one is possibility, say we are throwing a coin. So if we are throwing a coin, we are having two possibilities, either we will be getting head or either we will be getting tail. Okay, so now out of these two, if we consider one of the event as nothing but our past event, and another will be automatically becoming the failure. Okay, so binomial distribution is something which is applicable for this bi word, is nothing but representing the occurrence of two events. So here we are, sorry, not two events, I can call it as two possibilities. So we are having the two possibilities over here. So let us consider one of the possibilities, say pass, means it is passing some criteria, and another one is corresponding to failure. Okay. So let us consider that probability of passing in a single independent event is represented by small p, and probability of failure is small q, which will be nothing but 1 minus p. Okay. So now let us consider that we are doing the large number of trials, and n, capital N, represents our total number of trials. Okay. So this is nothing but total number of trials. Now let us consider that small n is a number which represents the number of successive trials. Number of success during this n number of trials. So in this case, what will be happening? This capital N, for example, capital N may be 100, and small n, say out of this 100, we are having only 10 successful trials. So 10 will be our small n. Okay. So if we are having this type of distribution, this type of situation, and we want to estimate that out of capital N number of trials, what will be the probability for n number of successes? For such type of situations, we go for the binomial distribution. And one important thing you have to consider, that while we are doing this capital N number of trials, each and every trial is independent of its previous trials. Okay, so it means each experiment, whatever we are doing, that is nothing but an individual or independent entity, okay, which is not affected by the previous trials. Okay, so for such type of things, if we have to find out the probability of n number of successes, that is given by binomial distribution as n factorial divided by capital N minus small n factorial into small n factorial into probability of success in a single trial raised to power number of successes into probability of failure raised to power number of failures. So this is something which is known as the binomial distribution, and particularly it is applicable when we are having in a single event two possible situations. Okay, and then for that event we are going for multiple trials, and from a big sample we are trying to find out that how many will be the or what will be the probability of number of successes. Okay, now if we consider the limiting case of this binomial distribution, and let us consider that our capital N is approaching to infinity and small n is approaching to 0. So it means we are having the large number of data, large number of trials, but out of these, very few are having possibility to achieve the success. Okay, so in this case, I am not exactly saying that we are considering infinite and 0, but what we are doing, we are considering capital N, which is very large, and small n, we are considering number of successes are very, very small. So it means some event which is oftenly occurring. So, which is not very often to get success. So over here, what will be happening? If I take the probability, this is, I have written it wrongly. So limiting case, I want to take that the probability of success is very, very small. Okay. So what I have done over here, I have taken that my number of samples are approaching to infinity, total number of trials are approaching to infinity, and probability of success in a single independent trial is very, very small. That is something which is approaching to zero. So if we are having such situations, such limiting situation of the binomial distribution, so in this case, what will be happening? The product of n into small p will be tending to some finite value a. Okay, because what we are doing, our p is very, very small and n is very large. So product of large into small, we will be getting a finite value from it. So that a we are calling as our finite value. So in this type of special limiting case, our probability of n number of successes becomes equal to a to the power n into e power minus a divided by n factorial. Okay, and this type of limiting case of binomials distribution is something which is called as the Poisson's distribution. So this limiting case, when n is approaching to infinity and p is approaching to zero, this particular distribution is something which is known as the Poisson's distribution. Okay, so these are some standard distributions I have included over here. But majority of the times, while we will be doing our experiments, we will be actually trying to follow some another distribution, particularly for the experiments related to fluid and thermal science. So that we will try to see in subsequent slides. Okay. Now, this type of distributions, whatever I have shown over here, these are applicable when we are having the large number of data set available. Okay, so we are having this capital N is actually very, very large. So if our capital N is very large, we will be able to get this type of ideal distribution, whatever I have plotted over here. Okay, and we can obtain a very smooth distribution. However, if our number of samples are very less, in that case, what we can do, we can plot something which is called as the histogram. So over here also the concept is same, that we are considering over here, say our target distance is from varying from 0 to 120 centimeter. So in that case, what we have done, we have taken the step size of 10 centimeter in each zone, and in that what we have considered, we have counted that if we are having total as our 99 number of throws, so out of these 99, how many number of throws are actually coming inside the individual targets, whatever we have divided. Okay, so here you can see this curve over here is nothing but represents our distance from the target. So for example, first is 0 to 10, then 10 to 20, and corresponding number of throws, successful throws between these individual zones, these are actually plotted along the abscissa. So whatever the plot we are actually seeing over here, this type of curve is something which is called as the histogram. Okay, so this what we are getting, if you have to just join this histogram, mean value of these histograms, you will be finding nothing but some distribution. But as what we are having now, we are having our total number of trials are very less, so that's why we will not be getting a smooth distribution over here. So that's why we are not showing it with a curve, rather we are trying to show with the individual number of throws between a discrete data set. Okay, so same type of curve, if we are increasing the step, instead of 10 centimeter, if we are considering the step of 20 centimeter, then we will be getting curve something like this. Okay, so this type of curves we plot when we are having the less number of trials. Now, one more diagram is there, which is known as the cumulative frequency diagram. So nothing but in this cumulative frequency diagram, what is done, you can see that we have written the distance from target along abscissa, and we are having the fraction of throws which are less than x. For example, when we are considering the value of 20. So what we will be doing for finding out this fraction, what we have done, we have taken the total number of throws which were having target distance less than 20 centimeter, and that number divided by total number of samples. So this n I am representing as n20. Say this is representing the number of trials where we are having the target distance less than 20 centimeter. Okay, and divided by total number. So that will be giving us nothing but the fraction of throws. So that fraction of throws we have included over here. Now when we are considering 40, so at that time we will be considering n40 by n. So now in this n40, now we will be having all the points which are less than target distance of 40 centimeter. Okay, so that's why in this case what we are doing, basically we are taking some specific limit, and below that specific limit we are considering all the number of trials which are lying in that range. Okay, so that is nothing but that gives us some cumulative number whatever we are having till that particular point. So that's why this type of plot is something which is called as the cumulative frequency diagram. Okay, and along ordinate we are having fraction, because why we are having fraction? Because we are considering number of successful trials in that zone divided by total number of trials. Okay, and when we will be reaching to the sufficient distance away from the target, so in that zone obviously all the samples will be coming inside that one. So that's why for the final values we will be getting the value of this fraction close to 1. Okay. Okay, then another type of probability distribution we are having, Gaussian or normal error distribution. This is something which is very important, and in majority of the times, if we are doing the experiments properly, we are having properly controlled experiments. For such type of experiments, we will be finding that our data set will be following the normal distribution. So basically in our data set, nothing but here comes the random errors. So random errors, if we are having the large sample space, random errors tries to follow always a normal distribution. Okay, and based on this distribution only, we will be able to specify the level of precision in our experiments. Okay, so for normal distribution, if you try to write down the mathematical formulation, probability of x is something which is given by 1 divided by sigma square root of 2 pi times exponential of minus x minus xm, where xm is nothing but our arithmetic mean, which I have told you in our last class, square divided by 2 times sigma square. Okay, so this is nothing but this represents our normal distribution. Okay, and now if we have to find out or if we have to consider, so x is a some parameter, and over here what we are finding out, we are nothing but finding out the probability of occurrence of x as per the normal distribution. Okay, so this type of normal distribution, if we plot along ordinate, along abscissa as x and along ordinate as probability of x into square root of 2 into pi, we will be getting distribution something like this. So one I have shown over here for the value of standard deviation sigma equal to 1, and another type of normal distribution is shown over here. So this is for a value of standard deviation of 0.5. Okay, so over here you can see in case of normal distribution, we are getting certain value of x corresponding to which we are having the maximum probability, and all our entire data set is actually lying around that mean value. Okay, similarly you can see, okay, so what we are having over here for sigma equal to 0.5, also you can see that the probability of occurrence of the mean value has increased. However, the spectrum around which our all the probability data is lying, that spectrum has actually narrowed down when our this standard deviation has decreased. Okay, so let me first explain this concept, that if we have to integrate our p of x over the entire range of dx from minus infinity to plus infinity, in that case what will be happening? Nothing but what we are trying to do now, we are considering px as probability of x, and that we are integrating for the entire range of the x. So what is the, if we consider x some real number, so for that what will be the range? Range will be nothing from minus infinity to infinity. That will be the entire spectrum over which our x value can change. So if we consider this one, this sum of all these values, because it is nothing but representing a probability function. So it means this whole integration should be equal to 1. So this nothing but this signifies that if we are having some normal distribution which is actually changing from minus infinity to plus infinity, then the area under that entire normal curve will be equal to 1. Okay, so that is something which we are actually signifying from this integration term. Now you can see over here that what is basically happening, we are getting some particular value for which we are having the maximum value of the probability and maximum probability of occurrence of that data, and then whatever the remaining values we are finding that are nothing but line or particularly showing some spectrum across that particular value. Okay, the particular value across which our data revolves or data actually occurs, that particular value is something which is called as the mean. Okay, so from these plots you can clearly see that the maximum probability of occurrence of any value if you are getting over here, that is nothing but corresponding to the mean value. So if our x is tending to xm, means it is tending to the mean value. In that case, if we find out the probability corresponding to mean, that is nothing but equal to 1 divided by sigma times square root of 2. Okay, so this is the maximum probability for occurrence of the mean value. Okay, so in case the conditions where, so here you can clearly see that the value of standard deviation is actually controlling the maximum probability of occurrence of mean. So if value of standard deviation, if value of sigma is small, in that case what will be happening, probability of x of m will be high. So that is something which you can see over here in this plot. When our sigma is 1, in that case we are finding this as our probability of occurrence of mean value, and when our sigma is 0.5, the corresponding probability of occurrence of mean value has actually increased significantly. Okay, so from here we can clearly see that if our maximum probability of occurrence of the event is increasing, that will be actually decreasing our spectrum. So in that case, we will be moving towards the more precise data. Okay, so this is something which actually signifies the precision of the experiment. How precision? Because if maximum probability we are getting inside this zone only, close to the mean, in that case what we will be having? We will be having the lesser area requirement in the portion away from that mean value. Okay, in order to achieve the total sum of unity. So that's why what will be happening, if our value of sigma is small, it means if surface tension is small, sorry, not surface tension, standard deviation. Okay, so if standard deviation is small, in that case what will be happening, our value of probability corresponding to the mean value will be highest, and that will be signifying that from this type of experiments our precision of the experiment is actually very high. Okay, then let us now try to further relate this normal distribution, whatever I have represented over here, in some generalized form. Okay, so now I have written the formulation of normal distribution as 1 by sigma times square root of 2 pi into e to the power minus of x minus xm whole square by 2 sigma square. Okay, now what will be happening, if I consider some variable eta which is nothing but equal to x minus xm divided by sigma. Okay, so in that case what will be happening, if I now try to integrate this function as function of eta, so earlier what I had done, so if I have to say integrate this one with reference to x in order to estimate the probability within some spectrum. Okay, so in that case what we will be doing, first we will be integrating the value from xm minus x1 to xm plus x1. So how? Let me first explain. So let us consider that we are having the variation of x along coordinate and variation of probability corresponding to x along abscissa. Okay. So now we will be having our say normal distribution something like this. Now what I want to do, obviously this is nothing but my mean value xm. Now say I want to find out that I have some value x1. Okay, what I am considering certain value x1, and I want to consider that x1 represents certain deviation from the mean value. Okay, and we want to find out that within this deviation value of x1, what will be the probability of occurrence of data. Okay, so that is something I want to show over here. So I can see that this is my mean value. So in positive side, if we are having a deviation of x1, so we will be having some point over here as xm plus x1. And similarly, if we want to consider the deviation from x1 in the negative side also, so we will be having some point over here as nothing but xm minus x1. Now, if I have to find out the probability that my data point, what will be the probability in a experiment that our data is actually lying in this spectrum of xm minus x1 to xm plus x1. So that will be nothing but whatever the area we will be having under this diagram, that area will be giving us the probability of occurrence of any data point between the values xm minus x1 to xm plus x1. So that is what I am doing over here, that if I have to find out the value of x, then what I have to do, I have to integrate from xm minus x1 to xm plus x, and what I have to integrate, I have to integrate 1 by sigma square root of 2 pi e to the power minus of x minus xm whole square divided by 2 sigma square into dx. Okay. So now this integration over here, you can consider that it is nothing but considering the value of mean also over here. So when you are calculating, you should know about the mean of the data. Now, if we have to make this in a general sense, so what we will be doing, we will be considering our some variable eta, which is nothing but x minus xm divided by sigma, and corresponding to this eta, we will try to find out the limits of integration xm minus x1 and xm plus x1. Okay, so ultimately, if we convert this distribution from x to eta variable, we will be finding that probability in terms of eta will be nothing but 1 divided by square root 2 pi into exponential of, and where power is integration is occurring from minus eta 1 to plus eta 1 and exponential of minus eta square by 2 d eta. So this will be happening when we will be converting our limits from x to eta. Okay, using the formulation eta is equal to x minus xm divided by sigma. So over here, what will be happening? Nothing but this eta 1 will be equal to x1 divided by sigma. Okay, so that is something which will be coming from this formulation. So now if we use this integration, so this integration nothing but it takes the standard form of the error function. So that's why for this type of integration, we need not to analytically solve it. Already tables are given over. So what we are having, so you can see clearly that we are having the value of eta 1 over here. And how to see this table, that let me explain you with the help of some example. So this table is over here available, which tells you the directly the value of integration, whatever you want to measure. Okay. Now let us try to see this with the help of one example. So let us consider initially that we are having some normal distribution in terms of x, where we are having the mean value over here, and this is our normal distribution. So corresponding to mean value, we will be having the maximum probability, and over here we are having p of x, and then we will be having the values of different values of x over here. Now what we have done, we have converted this entire distribution into eta. So when we will be plotting eta along abscissa, what will be happening? Corresponding to the mean value of x, we will be getting nothing but our value as 0. So over here we will be having 0, and say here we are having nothing but 1, here we are having 2. So something we will be getting a general curve. Okay, and our normal distribution nature will be remaining identical. Now, in this type of situation, let us consider that we want to find out the probability of occurrence of any event within the range of 1. So, we are considering that what will be the probability of occurrence of any event within the range 1. So, I want to ultimately find out the probability of 1. So, what will be happening? Nothing but over here, I have to find out actually this area under this whole region. So this area I want to find out. So now you can see what we have done. I have given you for this entire integration function, what I have written over here. For this entire integration function, we are having this table over here. So in this table, you can see the value of eta 1 is actually starting from 0, and then it is increasing actually, and it is going to say some value 1. Then we are having it is further increasing to 2. Then it is further increasing to 3. Okay. So what we'll be having if we consider that what I have told you just now, I have told you that if we do the integration of this curve from minus infinity to plus infinity, ultimately we will be finding area under this entire curve as nothing but equal to 1. So we will be having 1 as the area under the entire curve. So it means area on the left side of this curve will be 0.5 and area on the right side of this curve will be 0.5. Okay. So if we are considering the area close to the mean value, we will be having maximum portion of the probability in this zone, and when we will move away from the mean value, the probability of occurrence of the event will actually keep on decreasing. Okay. So now what we want to do, just now I have given you an example that we want to find out the probability within the range of variation of 1. So within the range of variation of 1, what will be happening? Ultimately, we want to find out this entire area. Now, how this entire area can be related to the value given in this table, let me just explain that one. So, what we will be doing first, if you see the table, our table is nothing but starting from value of eta equal to 0. Then we are having the different values of eta in increasing order 1, then eta 2, and then eta equal to 3, something like that. So, it means if we are considering this value of eta as 1, so corresponding to 1, what is our value? So this you can see over here, we are nothing but we are having 1 point over here. So this value is 0.34134. So it means if our normal curve is something like this, so till this point number 1, what we are having, our area is nothing but equal to 0.34134. Okay, so that is the value of area what we are having. Then if you go for the value of eta equal to 2, for eta equal to 2, we are having 47725. So it means till this point eta equal to 2, if we have to calculate the area, that entire area will be nothing but equal to 0.47225, whatever the value was given. And now if you have to find out the value of area till say some point 1.5 over here, for that what we have to do, for this point you can see clearly 1.5 value is directly given. Okay, now let me consider, say I want to calculate the value corresponding to some another value of 1.56. So what has to be done? Now till 1.5 we are having over here first digit after the decimal point. Now second digit after the decimal point is actually given along the different columns. So I have told you that I want to calculate the value corresponding to 1.56. So for 1.56, what I will be doing, 1.5 I am getting over here, and second digit after the decimal point is nothing but 6. So over here you can see the second digit after the decimal point is 6. So it means our value of area will be the intersection of these 2 points. So my this value of 0.44062 will be corresponding to value of eta 1 as 1.56. Okay. So this is how we can change this table. So now I have given you the condition that we want to find out the probability within the origin of 1. So for origin of 1, we have already seen that we will be getting this much area, and as our curve is of symmetric nature, so whatever the area we will be getting in the positive side, same area we will be having in the negative side also. So because of that, what will be happening for till 0 to variation of theta till 1, we have already seen that our area is nothing but 0.34134. So that's why probability for occurrence of 1 will be nothing but 2 times of 0.34134. Why I have done 2 times? Because along one side of theta equal to 0, we are having 0.34134. Same will be there on the left hand side also. Okay. So this is how you can estimate the probability of occurrence of any point when you are having a large sample available. Okay. Then we are having one very important concept of confidence interval and level of significance. So what confidence interval does, it tells us the probability that the mean value will lie within a certain number of sigma values, which is given by symbol Z. So it's nothing but it tells that what is the probability that your x is lying within certain level of x bar plus minus z sigma. Okay. So for example, if you can see over here, what we have done, we have included over here the confidence interval, and here we have written the percentage confidence level. So you can see clearly that if we are considering the occurrence of our event within the range of x bar is nothing but our mean value plus minus 1 sigma. So within x bar plus minus 1 sigma, just now I have told you that our area will be 2 into 0.31134. So in percentage, it will be coming close to 68.2%. Okay. So it means probability of occurrence of that event within the range of plus minus 1 sigma is 68.3. Then similarly, within the occurrence of plus minus 1.5 sigma, it is 90%. Within the occurrence of plus minus 1.96%, it is coming as 95%. So as you will keep on increasing the value of this Z, our confidence level will be actually increasing. Okay. And for a value of 3.3, you will be finding that 99.9% confidence level we are having. Okay. So generally, what is being done, if you have to consider the 99% confidence level, for 99% confidence level, your value of Z should be 2.57. It's nothing but it represents that your data is about the mean. It is actually having a spread within the limit of 2.57 times of your sigma value. Okay. So generally for the engineering applications, when we go, we consider this 99% confidence level when we do the engineering experiments. Okay. And level of significance is something which is considered as 1 minus confidence level, or in percentage 100 minus confidence level. So for example, when our confidence level is 99%, you can see the level of significance is actually only 1%. Okay. So now this value of Z is considered when we are having the large data set available. It means we are having large number of samples which are ensuring that our distribution is actually having normal when we are doing the properly controlled experiment. But if we are having very small data set available, then all the times we cannot ensure that our distribution will be normal. So in that case, what we do, instead of taking directly the value of Z, one delta value is considered, which is nothing but Z into sigma divided by square root of n, and within the limits of x bar plus minus delta sigma, we define the confidence level. Okay, so that is something which is applicable when we are having the less number of data points. Okay, then comes a very important concept of Chauvinet's criteria. So when we do the experiments, though we are considering that if we are doing properly controlled experiment, every time we will be finding that our distribution of random errors will be following the normal error distribution, or normal curve. Okay, but while you are doing the experiments, it may happen that you are getting some value or some reading which is actually very odd, okay, which is not coming inside any distribution. So there may be two possibilities. One could be that you are doing some gross blunder because of which this bad data point you are getting, and another possibility could be that there is some physical phenomena occurring under some controlled experimental condition which we are not able to explain. Okay, so these two can be the possibilities. So if you are getting any absurd data point, it doesn't mean that you can, by just simply looking into this data, you are removing it from your analysis. Okay, because in actual practice it may happen that it is occurring because of some certain phenomenon which we are not able to understand theoretically, okay, or we are not able to anticipate that phenomenon. So the removal of bad data point is something which is a very critical criteria, because we are not, by just looking into the data set, we cannot say always that okay, this data point is good, this data point is bad. Okay, so for this type of situation, Sovenet has given one criteria, and as per Sovenet's criteria, if our maximum deviation of a data point divided by the number of samples what we have taken or number of readings we have taken, if that maximum deviation is something that is following certain criteria, if that is beyond that criteria, then we have to remove that data point. And when we are applying this criteria, we have to be always consistent for all our experimental samples or experimental trials. Okay, so what is being done, say if we are repeating one experiment for n number of times, it is very unlikely to happen that probability of occurrence of any event will be less than 1 by n. Okay, so this is something which will be very unlikely to happen. So this is something which is taken as a very crude criteria, that if we are having n number of samples, and for any sample, if our probability is coming less than 1 by n, it means that sample is a bad sample. Okay, but in order to give a more rigid criteria, what has been done, Sovenet has considered that if our limiting probability value for any data point is less than 1 by 2n, then we may discard that sample. Okay, so corresponding to this limiting probability value of 1 by 2n, one table has been given corresponding to the number of readings. So if we are having say 3 readings, corresponding to 3 readings, maximum deviation divided by sigma, if it is plotted, if this maximum deviation divided by sigma is less than 1.38 for 3 readings, for experiments having only 3 readings. So if it is less than that, then it is an acceptable data point, and if it is beyond 1.38, then we can remove that data point. So similarly, it is given for the different number of samples up to the value of 1000. Okay, so now let us consider on right hand side we are having 10 readings which are coming from an experiment, and over here if we see the DI means deviation of individual reading divided by sigma, so we are getting different values. Okay, now from this table you can see that when we are having 10 number of readings, corresponding to 10 number of readings, the maximum acceptable deviation by sigma is nothing but equal to 1.96. So now if we compare our individual deviation, so you can see over here for sample number 5 or for reading number 5, our deviation is nothing but 2.046. So this deviation is actually beyond the maximum limit specified by Sovenet. So obviously, while we will be doing our analysis, we have to remove this 5 number data point, and then whatever the remaining values we are having, 9 values, based on that we will be taking our average and standard deviation, which one can include in the final analysis. Okay, and this is the graph for Sovenet's criteria. Then one more important thing is also there, because whenever we will be doing the experiments, every time we will not be having the large number of data sets possible. So because of that, what will be happening, our data set may be close to the normal distribution, but it may not be exactly identical to the normal distribution. Okay, so there is certain criteria which tells that how close our data is to the normal distribution. So for that, what we do, there is a concept of one graph which is known as probability graph paper. Okay, so probability graph paper we are having. So what we do in this we take whatever the readings we are having, we take the readings along abscissa, and along ordinate we plot the percent of readings at or below the value of abscissa. So say what I will be doing, if I have large number of errors, values x1, x2, x3, x4, I will be first arranging all these values in ascending order, and then these values I will be plotting along my abscissa. Okay, and corresponding to that, what we will be doing, we will be counting the number of times this reading has occurred below the value of x. Okay, so at or below, so we will be including x also, and below x how many number of times this reading has occurred, and that number divided by total number of trials we will be plotting along the ordinate. Okay, so in this, corresponding to this, we will be getting, because this is nothing but this is also some sort of cumulative measure. So from here we will be getting some value of probability corresponding to x1, say something over here. Then corresponding to x2, obviously the probability will be larger because it will include all the points till x1 plus all the values from x1 to x2. Okay, so in this case we will be getting some line over here. Now this curve is something, so over here in the right hand side you can see this is nothing but our scale of probability graph paper. So this scale of probability graph paper is chosen in such a fashion so that if our data set is following the normal distribution, it will be coming as straight line on our probability graph paper. Okay, so it means if I plot any normal distribution, that will be represented by a straight line on this probability graph paper. And one more important characteristic of this curve is there, that when we will be getting the probability value corresponding to 50%, corresponding to that, what will be happening, whatever our abscissa will be there, that will be nothing but depicting our mean value of that data set. Okay, so what we can do, whenever we are getting the sample during the initial stages itself, we can take this probability graph paper and we can represent our values on the probability graph paper. If it is close enough to the straight line, then we can say that our distribution is following the normal distribution. Okay, so this we are having some readings, 10 readings, and for these 10 readings, this probability graph paper, these samples are actually drawn on probability graph paper. So you can see over here, this black colored line represents a perfect straight line, which is representing the perfect normal distribution, and your data points are actually not exactly following this straight line. So you can see that your data is not exactly following the normal distribution, but it is close enough to the normal distribution. One important conclusion you can see from here, if you see corresponding to 50%, the value of your abscissa is something which is around 4.62. However, you can see in your actual practice, when you are taking the average of the sample, that is coming out to be 4.645. So it means your sample is not exactly following the normal distribution. If it would have exactly followed the normal distribution, your mean of the sample would have been 4.62. Okay. Then this is also another system for comparing our data with the normal distribution. So for that also, what is basically done, whatever the spectrum of data we are having, we divide that into discrete intervals, and within each discrete interval we count the actual frequency of occurrence of that data, and at the same point of time we also estimate the frequency of occurrence of that distribution from the using the normal distribution formulation, and then we will try to plot the cumulative frequency of the occurrence of individual x values And from here also you can see that if your cumulative frequency is exactly, your actual frequency is exactly matching to the norm frequency obtained from the normal distribution, then your data set is actually more of like a normal distribution. But over here also you can see there are certain regions where your actual frequency is actually deviating significantly from the frequency which is obtained from the normal distribution. Okay. Okay, so I'll stop at this point. So this is a very, very important lecture, because in this lecture what we have done, we have particularly discussed that what type of distribution our data set should have. And one important thing we have discussed, that in our data set, if we have to remove any data point, then how to decide that which one is our bad data point, which we should not consider in our final results. Okay.